that one.
All right, at 6:32, we are calling the meeting to order, the North St. Paul Planning Commission meeting of June 5th, 2025. Can we do roll call?
Yes, we may. Commissioner Alvarez.
Here.
Commissioner is Rathe.
Yes, sir. I'm here.
Elizabeth, you gotta help me out, last name? Gadbois, thank you. Commissioner Wise.
Here.
Commissioner Muhic.
Muhic,
Muhic, thank you.
like Buick, but with an M.
Yeah.
Muhic with Buick, that's right. And Kane-Burback.
Here.
And Chair Blees,
I am present.
all present. Thank you.
And our city council liaison.
And Councilmember Nordby.
Excellent. I saw nothing on the agenda that looked out of the ordinary to me. I would entertain a motion to adopt the agenda as written.
I'll make a motion.
Motion from Commissioner Rathe, a second.
I'll second.
Commissioner Wise, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Approval of minutes. We did not approve minutes at the last meeting in May because we did not have a quorum. So we have the April 3rd meeting minutes to approve. I would entertain a motion for that to approve as written.
Also move.
Moved by Commissioner Muhic. Second?
I'll make a second.
Second from Commissioner Rathe. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Meeting minutes of May 1st. I would entertain a motion for approving those as written unless there is discussion.
I'll move to approve.
Moved by Commissioner Wise, seconded?
I'll second.
Second by Commissioner Gadbois. All in favor, say aye.
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 We are open to the public, and there's no public here.
You don't want to wait to see if they come rushing in?
They might come rushing in, but I don't think we'll wait. We already started 2 minutes late, so, you know, they're really behind.
Missed their opportunity.
Technical difficulties, you know.
Speak now or forever hold your peace.
Yes. So we have no public hearings on the agenda tonight. We have commission business, action items and recommendations. Mr. Roberts, would you like to begin with your?
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. The first item is item A there at the bottom of the first page, which is page 10 in the packet in the online version or printed version. It's a request generated by city staff to look at the zoning and comprehensive plan designation for some properties. If I can get, pardon me, because I hate these pads and my mouse doesn't work, so oh, here we go. Pull this down, there we go. The two areas on the screen outlined in red, thank you very much. They are, well, I'll back up a little bit. We as a staff, myself and city manager, identified these as areas that potentially the city should amend the comprehensive plan and the zoning map for them. A little background history I included in the report I found from 2015. The city council at that time completed a rewrite of the zoning ordinance. And after that, then they and the planning commission looked at several areas in the city that may have had the comprehensive plan land use designation and the zoning designations were inconsistent. And I included in the report what were called Area 10 and Area 11 at that time. And those are areas along the south side of 7th Avenue, right in this same area. And I included those just for historical reference. If there were commissioners on back in 23, you probably remember these. It's only hopefully been 2 years. But in looking through the minutes from the Planning Commission for Area 10, they recommended that that be recommended for potential rezoning. And the difference was because the land use designation is the corridor mixed use in that area, but is a medium density, but it was zoned single family, so they weren't consistent with each other. Similar with Area 11, which is, again, right in this same area. I think that's right up in this area, I believe, if I'm reading my map right. Yes, page 12 of the report. Same question. The land use designation was high density, but the zoning was medium density, so they were not consistent with each other. Commissioners agreed that that should be looked at for potential rezoning. For whatever reason, I never found record that either one of those areas ever went through the process with the council for rezoning. So they still are those designations from 2023. Similarly, the areas on the north side of 7th Avenue, again, this area and the area on either side of Oak Place, I'm going to try to find a couple of maps here, and this might be a struggle, but we'll see. Well, first of all, we're going to click. So this is the area along south. The north side of south, just south of the new townhomes, recently built townhomes at the old Simstone, or Anchor Block, single family area. And actually, all these, I'm going to be switching around here, all these properties have single family homes, except this is a vacant lot right here on the corner, and this is a vacant lot right here on that corner. And all of these are in the comprehensive plan are planned for corridor mixed use, which is the same designation all the way up into downtown, and it carries all the way to McKnight Road on both sides. And that, when the comp plan was done 8 or 9 years ago, was thought, certainly the downtown area, look for the redevelopment, we'll have mixed use, hopefully some of it has occurred, some of it hasn't. That'll be a great thing. We should just continue that all the way through out to McKnight Road. The zoning, however, in that same area is MU3, which is consistent with, again, the mixed-use land use designation. So that's a good thing. You want the comprehensive plan and the land use plan, land use designation in the comprehensive plan and the zoning to be consistent, and they are. However, the MU3 zoning does not allow for single-family homes. So all these single-family homes, as I outlined in the report, are now legal non-conforming uses. And the
Currently they are.
Currently they are, because of the current zoning, correct.
Okay.
Thank you. And because of that, there are limits in the code, which I, again, tried to explain, took the code language that limits the amount of change or expansion any one of those properties can do to no more than 10% of the gross floor area, or no more than 10%, a modification or expansion of no more than 10%, and when such expansion would eliminate an adverse effect or condition which is inconsistent with the MU3 zoning district. In my mind, in reading that, it's severely limiting. And as I put in the report, might even prevent somebody from replacing a two-car garage, a detached two-car garage if it's falling down, or wanting to add one if there's not even one there. And I'm sure that was kind of an unintended consequence of the zoning and land use designation. And so, with all that said, staff is proposing, or we want to bring to you the idea of changing the land use plan on the properties to something, what did I put here? instead of the corridor mixed use, it would be a medium-density residential. I forgot the exact term, and I apologize. And with that, the zoning district change would be to an R2 zoning, which allows for single-family homes and townhouses up to, what I think, 7 units per gross acre. That, and that designation, come off there, would allow that would be, make the single-family homes permitted uses, so they would no longer be legal non-conforming uses, and would allow a little more density if a developer was so inclined. The other thing to remember with any development or redevelopment, I guess it would be, is for a project to be successful, a developer, builder, whomever, would have to acquire several properties and put them together to do a project. And with all the existing single-family homes, maybe that could happen. I have my doubts. Of course, you can never say never, but I think in the near future, that doesn't seem very likely. So all that said, we wanted to bring this to you as a staff-generated idea to change the zoning, change the future land use designation for these areas, again, to the medium density in the comprehensive plan and the R2 zoning in the zoning code, and want to have that discussion with the commission. If the commission is for or against, if they're for, we'll schedule a public hearing and do a formal notice and all that kind of thing. But for now, we want to get some initial impressions from the commission. And with that, I will stop and take questions.
So these changes are just to kind of align with what reality is?
Yes, that's how I would phrase it, yeah.
As far as the future is concerned, if a developer were to obtain several properties, what would he be able to do by right, and what would he be able to do with by obtaining permission?
Is if we change
If
the
we
zone.
change it, yes, I'm sorry, yes.
Yeah. If the designations are changed, for example, the comprehensive plan would allow townhomes at 6 to 12 units per acre. And in the land use plan, and the zoning is for both single family, and does allow townhouses as well. So that would be minimal challenge on that front. If somebody really, I don't know, clearly I don't know the history of the city enough to say, but let's say hypothetically, somebody wanted to acquire all these properties and try to build another large apartment building. Then it would be back to changing the comprehensive plan, changing the zoning as part of the review process.
I guess that's kind of what I'm trying to get at is, let's say on a per acre basis, if they were allowed to do 12 units in that 1 acre, how high a building would we be looking at?
3 to 4 stories.
Okay,
So very similar to the ones that are downtown.
okay.
But for developers do it, they buy up properties and they redevelop them.
Yeah.
Certainly possible, but in the foreseeable future, I don't see it happening, but that's my crystal ball.
Personally, I don't see a problem with that. Does anybody else have any objections that they want to raise at, a different point that we might want to consider?
Yeah, I think I would agree with you. It would seem that, I mean, it's kind of the classic zoning dilemma. Do you change the zoning before somebody asks you to change the zoning? As the government, do we do that? And what is the advantage of doing that? And I don't see any disadvantage.
Yeah.
I see the advantage being that you're giving the current property owners more flexibility.
Yeah, that's my thought as
So
well.
I think
Yeah.
it seems like a very positive move.
It's not going, I don't see a negative impact because it's not like it's going to raise their taxes or anything based on the zoning, so.
And if somebody wanted to go and acquire properties and build an apartment, they could basically go do that now. Based on the
Yeah.
current zoning.
Yeah. I guess the one reason I was asking about the acre was I was just thinking about that one property that, did it used to be a community theater or something like that, where it's the vacant land that's there at Charles and 7th? That's a fairly large
It
piece.
was a Masonic temple.
Masonic temple, yeah. And that was the only thing I was thinking about, is that's the one piece that maybe if somebody bought that and possibly the property next to it, they could, put up a reasonably large development there.
Yep.
But I don't see it as a problem. That was just my curiosity.
The vacant lot, if my memory serves correct, the vacant lot was studied.
This one here or this one? Two of them.
Yes, one of those vacant lots, I believe, was part of the study from HGA about possibly turning it into a small park.
Yeah, and that
Would
was also
the-
this property too, Jason, along here.
Would the zoning change have any effect on those possible plans? I don't believe so, but I wasn't sure if parks fell into the same category in both zones.
No, I don't foresee an impact on that. And for clarity, the city owns this lot on the corner. And I think Burwald owns this lot on this corner.
One of them. Yeah, I can't remember which one. I think Burwald owns the one over on Second, don't they?
Yes.
Yeah.
So if I may, Mr. Chair, unless I'm hearing more or something different, the general consensus is that yes, go ahead.
We don't need a formal motion for that.
No, it's just, again, kind of floating the idea. If I heard
The
a
consensus is accurate, yeah.
If I heard a bunch of no, heck no, don't do it, then it would have been a different story, but
Seems fair for the 25 people that have homes in that as there is.
Yeah.
Were they even aware that this?
I don't, probably not. So we will, we'll keep pushing forward on that then.
Okay.
Thank you.
Or just one clarification, so it's currently zoned MU3, correct? And you're suggesting to go to R2?
Yes,
Okay.
which allows both single-family and twin homes, I believe, and I think even small developments with townhouses,
Okay.
if,
Like you said, if someone wanted to buy up property and put it in an apartment building, there would be a separate process that they have to go through as part of that approval,
yes,
once we've made this change.
right.
I think I would probably stick with what we have, but it sounds like I'm in the minority, so that's fine with me.
Well, I'm willing to be flexible. What's your thoughts on that?
I hesitate to lower the zoning to, the 7th Avenue is a main corridor. The homes that are in those parcels we're talking about are, they're older homes. It's not like any of them were recently built, so those types of things would be attractive to somebody that would be looking to build a little bit more dense project. And, if we make the change to R2, it's just adding a hurdle for them. But, either way, it's, I don't see it as like, a huge deterrent. It's just one more thing. that would happen.
On the other hand, a development such as you're suggesting, a more dense development is probably a PUD anyway. More than likely. It'd be a PUD, which gets treated differently anyway. So
Yep.
I guess I don't feel like we're putting significant restrictions on a greater development because that would have a different process. Anyway, so I think that's good.
Yeah.
My impression is if it's a well-designed, well-thought-out project, the city would do whatever changes or approvals would be necessary to get it there.
Yeah.
And if that means 5 years now, the maps are changing again. But
Okay,
in the meantime,
okay.
all right, thank you.
This-
Next item is ordinance talk about home occupations, unless, I'm sorry, I jumped ahead, unless there was more on that.
Well, not on that per se, and so this is probably a topic that needs to be addressed at a later time, but I'm just thinking in the downtown area, there is mention of allowing four-story buildings in the downtown area, and I'm just, would like to look at that a little bit more. What I'm kind of thinking about is, do we want to kind of establish a graduation of allowances in the future so that maybe the two blocks that are on either side of Margaret Street are allow for 4 stories, and the 2 blocks that are a little further out allow for 3, and things out further out from that are allowed for 2, so that you have kind of a gradual rise instead of having 3 and 4, 4-story buildings put up next to 2-story buildings. But like I say, I think that's not on the agenda, and so I just was thinking about that as we're talking about all the rest of this stuff. So it's probably something to be talked about at a later time.
Well, but if I may, Mr. Chair, item D on the agenda is a talk about the downtown design manual.
Well, that's a good place to do it.
Yeah. Anyway, sorry for throwing things off on the siding.
That's fine. We're pretty informal here,
I know.
by choice.
So the next item I have in the packet is about the home occupation ordinance and ordinances. And this is actually information that I found that Brandy had started working on 2 or more years ago. So I picked it up and kept the ball rolling on it. And the first couple pages in the report, which are pages 23 and 24, 25 in the packet, are the existing ordinance language, and then some comments down the right-hand side about the problems or issues or things that could be changed or should be changed with the ordinance. And so the first one is the definitions inconsistent in the different places in the code. There's questions about how the city should regulate home occupations in accessory buildings. And then the meat of the ordinance, which is section 3 in that table. Some of the different uses, how should we categorize them? Should we be more lenient? Should we be more restrictive? All sorts of things. And so with all that, I ran through, or didn't run through, but I prepared a draft amendment of the home occupation ordinance. That starts on page 27, if you're reading along at home. And what it does is, the one big change is, currently now the city says we have 2 types of home occupation, a level 1 and a level 2. What this is proposing to do is to break that into 3 levels, where the level 1s are those that have no visible neighborhood impacts, which would include signage or customers or clients coming to the home, and no external building changes. So the only 2 that I can think of are professionals working from home, which it's a little bit of an over-engineered maybe, because if any of you or I am working from home, who cares? Why does it even need to be in the zoning code? But I think the thought is, if it's not in the zoning code, then maybe technically it's a violation of the zoning code because somebody's working instead of residing at home. We don't have the zoning police going out and looking at windows to see who's working from home or not, but that's why that's there.
It's also different, if I'm working at home, it's just me doing my work.
Yes.
If it's a business where you have customers visiting, different story.
And that's in the level, that's the level 2.
Yeah,
types.
so I think that's the important thing about it, I think.
And then I added in there foster care because, again, I don't know that the city needs a regulator to know about if a home has foster children or not.
Would that even be classified as a business?
That was
Wouldn't
something
think it
Brandy
would.
had
Yeah.
suggested. I don't,
No, but I would even call that a business.
it's certainly not a business. It's,
Right.
but it certainly doesn't need to be regulated by the city. So I'm fine striking that if that's the,
I think foster
would
home
too.
is plenty regulated by
Yeah.
the state.
Yeah.
county and the state, yes.
Yep,
Okay.
county and state.
And I do like the moving of so many of those occupations into the level 2, because it's kind of like, if you're doing dressmaking and tailoring, it's very hard to do that without a client coming to your home.
Absolutely.
So,
Yep.
Barbershops.
Is it currently structured such that there's a permit or a license or something like that required for any of these?
Going back-
Any or all of these businesses?
Yes, well, okay, and the current ordinance, all those that are now level 2 are level 1s. And level 1s in the current ordinance, we don't even license or issue permits for. And so the old level 1s are now becoming level 2s, which will need some kind of an approval through the staff and planning commission. The level 3s are the ones that are, the new level 3s are the ones that are the most potentially disruptive to neighbors and residences. And those are the ones that will need city council approval. And so, yeah, the level 2 are what I would have always traditionally thought as a home occupation.
I'm confused by the inclusion of an art studio. How does that require a permit?
Well, I think what that's referring to is, say, if you're maybe even teaching art classes.
perhaps that's put under
Yeah.
tutoring.
Yeah.
So that would be under teaching.
Yep, it certainly could be. Or,
So a professional, like
Like an-
tutoring arts education, so that could also include music. So say arts education.
and could it be even professional artists that gather and, I don't know, do throw pottery or do work on a painting together or sculpture together?
But one of the key elements of the home occupation is that you're in it to earn money.
Yes.
So there's revenue. It's a revenue
It's
based.
a profession, yes.
Yeah, as opposed to
A hobby,
if you're just volunteering to help people with things.
right.
You're donating your time, so.
And that does bring us up to the tutoring line. I'd like to suggest that we put a little bit of a different spin on that and say that either consists of no more than 2 unrelated pupils, or perhaps 3 or more, something like that, just because, you may have a family of 3 or 4 or 5 that are bringing all their kids in for tutoring or voice lessons or whatever at one time. So, my thought is probably more than 2 unrelated pupils or something like that, just so that someone doesn't get called out by their neighbors because they've got a family coming in with 4 kids. Not that we would hope that would happen, but people get their knickers in a twist over some pretty petty things sometimes.
And with that, Cameron, if they are related, do we need an upper limit then of 4 or 5, or do we care?
If they're related, I don't think so.
Yeah, I wouldn't think that you'd care. If nothing else, they'd probably all be coming in the same vehicle, or at least maybe 2 vehicles,
I'm-
so
I
that's
come-
part of the,
Yeah, I come from a background of doing homeschool.
I was just going to ask you,
And it's a non-issue unless you're getting paid for it. I mean, in our circumstance, we wouldn't have had, considered it a home business under any circumstances. We could have had 12 kids there, because it would have all been
It's
volunteer.
almost like childcare. daycare
Yeah,
at that point.
it all would have been, just interaction of kids, essentially a play day, except at school.
and then that brings up one other thing, and it's not right there at that point, but we talked specifically about having to have driveway space to accommodate the people that are going to be using the business. And I can't think of any, but I'm sure that there are some homes in town that don't have driveways. So are we going to say, you know, could we allow them to sit, you know, somehow or another allow for parking in front of the home that's being used as a business as long as it doesn't exceed something or create a neighborhood nuisance or something? Or are we just going to say, well, if you bought a house without a driveway, you're, you know, forever unable to have a home business if you want to see a client there?
So as you bring up, I guess my question would be, as you think about the parking, do we have any issues in the town that we know about in any of this categories? Not that I'm aware of, but I get to play the new card for a while.
Yeah,
I don't know of any.
That's the
No.
reason why I'm inquiring.
yeah.
I mean, if there was a home business and there were, you know, 10 cars parked in the street and just always crazy amounts of traffic, you probably need to act on it. But,
Yeah.
I mean, it would take a lot to set that up, I think.
I mean, there's the guy that does the small engine repair over in Maplewood, but, I mean, again, there's 1 or 2 cars parked outside of it, I mean, that's nothing unusual.
Yeah.
I took a slightly different spin on the art studio. Going back, I thought more of like the crafters. You know, I just because of my wife, I know there's a lot of people that do the craft fairs and stuff like
Yes.
that. That is technically a
And that's what I was thinking.
home
I mean,
business.
Yeah, but they're not bringing customers necessarily to their home. They're taking it places.
I mean, my art studio is sitting on the couch.
Yep.
Right.
Assembling stuff and
Yeah,
preparing stuff to go to the.
yeah.
Right. So I mean, to make it perfectly legal, I might put /craft or crafting.
You say
I
craft
mean, would that go under,
business.
Well, see, and that's why
Doesn't matter what you're
why I
making if it's a business,
questioned the art studio.
Right.
Right.
Just stated that way as a level 2, because that is not something that needs a permit.
because that would be level 1 then.
Yeah, I thought art studio was staying level 1.
Is it?
Am I looking at the wrong page?
Am I
No,
looking at, it's in
no.
level.
Right
Level
now, it's
level
level 2.
Age 27.
Yeah, it's on
Proposed
level
as level
2
two.
for the new version.
Sorry, I was still on page 2.
Page 27 and 28, right in the bottom.
But well, you can think of an art studio, and to the tutoring and teaching, where you give classes on how to paint or draw
But I think there needs to be that distinction.
versus making your own stuff.
Yeah.
To sell at a fair.
Is-
I would
think-
agree.
There's a difference between a potter working out of their garage just for their own personal
Right.
satisfaction, as opposed to a potter that's teaching classes or conducting business in their garage and selling their product. So,
So if you're creating a product that you will take somewhere else to sell, I would think that would be treated differently
Yes,
from if you were having
I would agree.
customers come to your home.
yeah.
or clients.
And it would be a lesser level
Well, then,
in that case, if it's even considered a business.
and that's going back to the proposed level 1, professionals that work from home. If they're crafting at home, making their stuff, does that cover them?
Yeah, probably.
Probably. I just think there needs to be more clarification on
Yeah.
what is meant by art studio, because it's,
Just the verbiage.
So I'm understanding that the art studio is a question mark, so do we strike it or do we roll it into the tutoring musical
I
dance?
think you roll it into the tutoring, if you want to treat it that way.
Is there a reason why we need to break it out, other than breaking it down by the number of people coming to visit to purchase product? It feels to me like that's the number 1 piece.
Yeah.
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 It sounds like there's 2 things, whether people are coming and whether it's a business or not. So if it's a business and no one's coming, I mean, if you,
Level 1.
right, right.
Why
No one's
isn't it
coming.
level
Why is it-
1?
And if you're crafting and it's not a business.
Yeah.
And it's,
Not an
you-
issue.
you,
So
Yeah,
let's take it this way. Let's say you're creating something that you will take somewhere else to sell. Why can't that be level 1?
It should be.
nobody's coming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
that's the same as.
I
me,
think
I
that
work
makes
from
sense.
home and
What you call that, I don't know.
Well, to me, that's just another version of professional working at home.
Yeah.
Right.
Whether you're working
Okay,
on the
now-
computer.
But you have
or-
that identified under level
So
2.
the issue more
I-
is,
So
people
I-
are coming to your home.
think more the issue is, people are coming to your home. My question, I agree with barber shop and beauty shop being in there. Those are professions, I assume that you need certification of some sort.
Need a license.
Yeah.
A license.
You're supposed to have a license.
Yes, so do we want to be specific on sort of professions that need that sort of licensing, as opposed to just a casual small business working from their home?
Well, jumping ahead on line G in the ordinance, which is over on page 2 or page 28, the first item, it says a home occupation required to have a state license shall show proof of the license at city at the time of permit application.
Okay. The one other thing that I want to make sure that we have some out in this area is if it is a home occupation that creates a noise or noxious problem. I'm thinking about, people that do metalworking, maybe for sale off, or God forbid, well, I don't mean that way, but like a blacksmith, I could see somebody saying, I'm setting up my forge in my garage, and the neighbor is saying, you're pounding on metal at midnight, or.
There is a sound ordinance that
Yeah.
takes care of that issue.
Burning coal.
Right, well, I just want to make sure that is kind of mentioned somehow or another in the home occupation.
And if we jump to number 7, on G7, it says no home occupation shall produce light, glare, noise, odor, waste, smoke,
Okay.
gases, heat.
Thank you. Just wanted to be
That's
sure.
good. Yep.
Discernible beyond the property.
Yeah.
Could we clarify the art studio part just by saying?
I'm still not clear on that, so.
I kind of like the idea of removing those because it does say level 2 home occupations may include but are not strictly limited to. Why do we need to write them out?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why do we? Can we take them away? And instead focus on the amount of people, clients coming.
It says, has no potential neighborhood impacts except for signage, customer visits, and parking areas.
Yeah.
So we've got the customers coming in covered.
Could we grab all of these things and just call it like on-site retail? Because it's basically the opposite of what you're saying. If you're taking it, selling it somewhere
On-site,
else.
client-based.
Yeah, on-site service, on-site retail, something like that.
I think it's easier to define the retail part at the home rather than saying
Yeah.
taking it somewhere else. And
Yeah.
it doesn't necessarily
It
mean.
has to do with, do your customers come to you?
Yes.
That's what,
Right,
so
yeah.
how we phrase that, I think that's the key that
Yep.
keeps coming up.
Then
How do we phrase it? I don't know.
Yeah.
Something for me to work on.
Yeah, something
back
for
to-
staff to work
So,
on.
am I hearing there's not even really a need to call out art studio?
No, I don't
No.
know that we need to call out any of these.
It's just if people are coming or not.
Well, because we as a staff will get a question, well, is this that, or is this that, or
Are
then,
people coming? That's the.
yeah.
Yeah.
And
Do
is
you
it
plan
something
on
that
having people
hasn't-
come to your house?
And if you want to be specific, they're customers, clients are under contract, customers are people you do business with. Just clarification for you.
And then, I believe there was a list of services that are not allowed, so you can,
Well, if we can,
That area, right?
That's specific to number 2. If you look at number 3, things do change dramatically.
yes.
So, but specifically for 2, it feels to me as make a couple of examples, like the barber shop, beauty shop,
Yeah.
and drop the rest of them would be my observation.
That's good.
Do you think there's harm in either keeping the professional offices or the
that might be.
teaching? The last one, the tutoring, musical,
People coming.
Yeah,
to Cameron's point of the unrelated folks.
it doesn't hurt, I think, to have those few listed as long as we have opening for, there may be others.
As it says,
you know.
not strictly.
Not
Right, not strictly limited to.
Includes, but.
Okay. So the 2, I think we fairly well figured out. And remember, to adopt this, I'll have to put it in a formal ordinance form and bring it back, so you all have a
Right.
second.
Now, one more question, and it's about level 3 in plumbing, because I believe we have a resident that this might affect. Hypothetically, let's say I own a plumbing business, a sole proprietor, and I have a box truck for my business that I park in my driveway. Am I operating that business out of my house?
What's the difference if I work for a commercial company, I have the company's vehicle.
Yeah.
Take it
Yeah.
and park it in the same driveway.
Yep.
Agree.
You're not you're not doing the work in your house.
Well, unless
So
they've
you're
got a home.
officing out of there.
Yeah, if you've got a home-based office, then,
You mean at home-based office, meaning people are coming to your home?
no,
Because that's the issue is.
a home-based office doing the paperwork.
So
Yeah.
in that scenario,
That, than someone working from their home.
Right, but in
This is my
that s-
scenario. This is my
right,
exact scenario.
in that scenario that Jason brought up was, you have a vehicle in which you go out and you service homes somewhere or whatever, and then you come back and you park your vehicle. So the only home-based business component of that is a vehicle in their yard, and maybe they have a home office. But they don't have customers coming, and does that impact the neighbors?
Well,
There's a vehicle sitting there,
well, and there's rules about size of vehicles,
right,
commercial vehicles.
and that's elsewhere in the ordinance, correct?
Yes.
So that I think
Where,
is,
where those start morphing is, well, now my helper comes over to my house and he rides along with me. So now we've got an extra vehicle coming to the home in the morning and staying there. And,
yeah,
well, now I got two helpers, and now I have materials delivered to my house, and then where do I store them? And you start going down that slippery slope. And that's why level 3, I even highlighted
yeah,
a couple of things there that need discussion.
There's also a caveat there, right? So if you're starting to get 2, 3 people working for you and you're starting to have product delivered, you're starting to look for locations because there's certain limitations that your house is not gonna support.
Are you?
My observation.
Are?
My observation, and if I think about this, whether you're in contracting trades, whether you're in HVAC, whether you're in plumbing, that's literally most of the guys that, my experience, and I've worked in that field, generally that's the case. It's not always the case, but generally it is. But if you're starting to have product delivered, you're now having extra vehicles delivered on a regular ongoing basis, it's a different conversation to start having.
so the point, I think, is, yeah, it probably still belongs as a level 3 just because it has that potential of being that more complex scenario. I think of the guy who's got a small remodeling window replacement business or something. And his workers come and meet him at his house. And then they drive off and go service their residences where they're installing windows, and they come back. And so now you've got traffic. You potentially have, like you said, materials sitting in the garage that you're going to load up on a truck. It has the potential of impacting the surrounding properties, I think.
And the people that run lawn care, home maintenance, or home property maintenance,
Yeah.
they might have a pickup and then they have a flat trailer and they got 3 or 4 mowers or 2 or 3 skid steers, and maybe they got 2 or 3 people to come at 4 in the morning when the snow flies, and then they go out. Well,
Yeah,
What about the Uber taxi guy that has 3 or 4 people, the cars sit in the driveway and the swap cars out during the day? Similar concept.
yeah. So in section E with the level 3, that's why I flagged, and those words are the current words. I didn't propose many changes, but I just said both 2 and 3 need some clarification, because small engine repair, is that, I'm working on chainsaws, am I working on lawnmowers, am I working on ATVs,
yes.
potentially, and how much of that do we want in residential areas? If it can all be done inside a garage, but sure as heck, if he's doing an ATV, or she, or a snowmobile, they're gonna get test drove in the neighborhood before they send them out.
One thing I was wondering is there some way that we could put I'm going to call it an escape clause that says, like, if they get complaints from their neighbors, that these have to be looked at in greater depth, and maybe, the thing that occurs to me is maybe you get like 2 or 3 unrelated, or 2 or 3 complaints from unrelated people, because we all know that sometimes somebody gets something stuck in their craw and they do nothing but make complaints about the same location over and over and over again, whereas it doesn't bother anybody else. But
I think we're covered, though, with the ongoing text where we're talking about not being disruptive in the
The general provisions.
general provision.
There's a lot in there.
We also have the opportunity for the zoning administrator, community development director, and council to all have a say in,
Okay.
is it a level 2 or is it a level 3? There's opportunities there to look at the business and say, we're going to license you, but here's what we think,
And here's
and
the
here's how we're going to judge your business, that kind of a thing.
Well, we do say that the license has to be renewed every so often, right? I think, is it annually, or, that was one thing I was thinking about, was maybe we ask for a renewal every other year or something like that, rather than annually, just to make it a little less arduous on city staff.
And I don't know the answer to that yet, Cameron. But when the current ordinance says contractors and small engine repair, those are so vague. I'm not sure what they mean. Is it a contractor? Again, he's a home remodeler and he builds decks and porches. That's a contractor. Contractors do a lot of different kinds of work.
We do.
Hopefully good work. Well, of course. And maybe it doesn't need to be clarified, but it didn't seem real clear to me. And what does that mean if a contractor, is it, again, all the scenarios we just talked about? And if it's running a contracting business from a home, depending on, again,
And a contractor can mean a lot of things too.
Right.
Just the
it
word
can.
contractor. You're thinking construction contractor.
correct.
But there's many other kinds of contractors, so maybe we want to at least say that we're talking about construction, people who do construction-related things.
But then, it's in the same breath, we call out specifically heating, plumbing, or air conditioning
Exactly,
services.
yeah.
So,
General construction is what you're talking about there, so.
Well, could we maybe specify and say off-site construction?
Well.
Or some term like that?
Well-
That indicates that it's not allowed at the house.
Well, yeah, I think if it's at the house, it's one of those crafty, you're building things at your house to sell
Yeah.
elsewhere
Yeah.
kind of things.
I would group those into a couple of categories. You've got building trades, and you've got
Yes.
mechanics and repair.
Maybe building
That
trades.
is a good way to put
Yeah.
I
it.
think
building
maybe
trades.
building trades is a good way to do it.
And building trades is listed right now.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because that covers,
all
of
of
it.
it.
Yeah.
Again, yeah,
and you don't have to list heating and plumbing in general contract construction, because building trades covers it.
There's a flooring guy down the road from me that has 4 vans. Every morning, they all come, and they get in the van, they leave.
And they, yeah,
And they don't really disturb anybody.
Yep.
yeah,
And they've been doing this for years.
yeah.
And they do.
And I would say if it confuses you, you definitely need to bring it up because, you know, it may confuse other administrators in the future.
right, well, and, yeah. So, is there a consensus on contractors? Do we even need it?
I think you use building trades and you take all those others out of there.
And if you Google building trades, it literally says carpenter, electrician, plumber, heavy equipment operator. Like it gives, so if you don't know and you're looking at this and you Google it, those are going to come up.
Yep.
So I feel like that
It's a really good
takes
idea.
care of a lot of it.
So, would it be okay to, so we got building trades, to just to have some words say including but not limited to heating, plumbing, air conditioning, electrical, general contracting, or
Sure. Could,
just make it all one thing?
yeah.
I also would switch the language for family daycare to say in-home daycare. That's the language that's used.
That's a good idea.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah.
Versus a facility.
Yeah, versus it's a center, typically it's center or in-home is what people.
And are we necessarily talking about youth
No.
daycare?
No, not necessarily.
Okay,
It can be adults.
any kind of daycare, okay.
So we're not having contractors, we're doing in-home daycares. And then what about the small engine and small equipment repair?
Leave those, I think. I think it can be vague. I don't know that we need a whole lot of
I think it could be vague too.
I
Elaboration.
don't want to necessarily overthink it, but in my world, I have to think of the worst-case scenario,
Yeah.
because I get the phone calls.
Right, right.
Well, and that's why I keep bringing up all this strange stuff, is because, you know, I'm thinking worst-case scenario too, or trying to.
And I'll ask a question, because apparently I'm in violation.
You know,
We try not to do that.
You know you're being recorded.
Yeah,
right?
that's okay. Are we set on keeping single-phase a requirement?
Single,
Phase?
For electrical?
Power?
Is that listed?
That's
Really?
That's
Item
required
9.
for a home occupation. So if you've got multiple phase for personal use, it wouldn't fall under that. At least that's how I'm reading it. But I did circle that one myself.
Item 9.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess I'd ask the question, why would you have,
Because I have a mill in my garage that I needed three-phase for, so I have
really?
a VFD.
You have a converter that.
Wow,
Okay,
really?
so technically you only have 240 going to your home and you have a converter that jumps it to three-phase.
Correct, but it lists as no mechanical or electrical equipment requiring.
Oh, yeah, in violation.
But it says shall be,
Home occupation or for your own personal use?
If it's your home hobby, then you're.
I'm using it as a hobby and I get paid occasionally.
well, then,
So.
I think by the IRS definition, that qualifies as a hobby, since you're not doing it as your main occupation.
Yeah.
True.
And you'd be grandfathered in. Because that,
Well, that
Was
too,
recorded,
too.
right?
because this is that's a new provision. That's not in the current code.
Now, this brings us to item 12, though, which I do have a problem with, under G. Retail sales or distribution of products on the premises are prohibited. Well, okay, if you're a dressmaker, a barber, a tailor, you're providing your service there. You're saying that they can't charge for that if they're being allowed to do that service?
No, I think that it's on products, so what I think of is when the Mary Kay lady or the,
Well, but if
Or-
you're
or the-
tailoring a suit, you're leaving with that suit.
right, but
That's a product that you-
Another example.
you're paying for the service to get the suit tailored, you're not paying for the suit itself.
is
at that-
another-
Not necessarily. If you get a bespoke suit, somebody is bringing in cloth,
Yep.
you know, that you're
Might have made it
buying.
From
And
scratch.
another example is the hairstylist.
I was like,
will
their
have
shampoo and,
Well,
That would be
but
occasional sales.
you read the second sentence.
They have-
The second sentence says occasional sales of products.
But if they have regular clients coming in, that's regular sale.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the other
what's
thing,
regular?
under subletter I, products are shipped to and from the premises. I think and/or the premises would be a better,
Yeah.
because otherwise it makes it sound like you have to have products going both directions.
There,
Is that different than an Amazon or eBay seller?
there is also the provision, customers visit the
Right.
premises by appointment only, which is, I think, a key there.
Okay.
Which would be the hairdressers.
I bring the dressmaker thing hits home because that's what my wife did for like 20 years. And so she would have customers, potentially a bridal party would show up along with their friends and their parents, the mothers.
They drink champagne.
No, there might be 6 or 8 people at a time, rarely, but usually it was 1 or 2, maybe 3. But that's by appointment only, which is an allowable component of this.
Okay.
So, yeah,
And that covers the
and
dressmaker and tailor.
yeah, and she potentially made stuff from scratch, and or was altering, you know. So there's various components, but I try and piece that together. Okay, what are we talking about here? Is it written right relative to what I know the facts to be in that kind of business?
And
And it
And I
seems
look-
like it's okay.
what, would it be or was it disruptive to the neighbors?
Never. I mean, neighbors probably didn't even know there was 2 extra cars in the parking lot for a while, you know, that kind of thing.
We have music instruction.
But we have a big driveway too.
So if we can jump back a couple of lines to item 10, another one I highlighted there. So that touches on, again, the lawn maintenance guy or the, in the summer, the snowplows sit outside, that they take them off the trucks. Or hopefully the lawnmowers get put away because they don't do well in the winter sitting outside, but,
30-foot ladder that doesn't fit in the garage.
right.
Uber driver that has 3 cars sitting in the driveway.
Yeah. Well, it says except functioning personal motor vehicles are used. But I've seen worst-case scenario where these can be kind of dumping yards or junk yards related to the business. Well, I use that plow or I use that skid steer at,
Yeah.
on and off.
What about the people who just have a bunch of cars in
Well,
there?
that's a
Yard.
whole, that's
Whole nother problem.
that's a nuisance ordinance thing.
Who's the young woman?
Mackenzie.
Mackenzie, she's on that, so that's pretty good.
That's
There's
a
other
com-
ordinances for that, that.
Yeah,
she
right.
goes on that pretty good.
Yeah.
One in Maplewood that's notorious.
Yeah.
So anyway, does
Okay.
that, do we need the item 10 language? Does it need changing? Again, I put on my worst-case scenario hat, but then I have to think about the realistically, is it enforceable?
Right.
Does
And
it
do
make
we
sense?
want to enforce it, is
That's-
the other piece of that.
Exactly, that's why I bring these to the commission.
I think it's, my leaning is probably don't need it, but worst-case scenario, could we have a problem? Yeah, but then I think you're talking about the enforcement of other, the nuisance ordinance.
If you
If
keep
that's
it in
the
there, could we maybe say there'll be no visible exterior storage? You know, if somebody wants to put up
Could do
a
that.
fence and qualifies to put up a fence, they can put
And
their.
park it in their backyard, kind of
Right,
thing?
Or
yeah,
would it be visible from the public street?
yeah.
What if
Yeah.
your neighbors can see it? That's the,
Yeah, that's the component there that,
because this,
yeah, I'm on my second floor, in my second floor bathroom, and I can see your junk in their backyard.
Yeah,
I think we get to the point where we're trying to regulate everything.
well,
Yeah.
right. And
We do not own an unregulated view from an unmitigated view of our. from
Right,
Right.
right, right.
But I have to look at their stuff.
Yeah, you do.
Or, God forbid, you hear the kids playing basketball. Oh, wait, that's a whole different.
Wasn't
What,
gonna
St.
say that.
St. Louis Park?
Yeah.
Happy children.
I-
Exactly. Kids are happy.
So if,
Okay,
if we change that to say no exterior storage visible from the public street,
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that I think could.
okay. So they can have the 6-foot fence.
Yeah,
Because they have to qualify for the fence and all that kind of.
and the fence has to be done right, yep.
Yes. Or if it's behind the home or in a
Yeah.
garage, then,
That's raises the point, do we need to put something specifically in here that allows for basketball hoops in the backyard?
not under the home occupation ordinance.
That's true.
Teaching basketball.
Yeah, there you go.
Then the, page 3 of the ordinance, there's a whole bunch of things that are not allowed. It's home occupations. I did get a question via email from a resident asking about the pet grooming and pet care, saying that, I was proposing that they not be allowed, but they asked, well, what about a pet sitting service in the home? Now, that's a service, or bringing a cat or a dog and dropping it off, potentially. I thought more pet service sitting was, you would go to the home of the pet, not
Not necessarily.
And I'm wondering why pet grooming is
On there.
on that list.
You can do
and not
beauty,
allowed.
you can do,
You can do beauty on
Right.
humans.
Yeah, true.
is it just because, okay, if a dog gets loose or something and they bite
or
someone,
the
that sort of
barking
thing?
or noise. I don't know.
Yeah, but their
I-
kids
I-
could get loose.
I stole that from
It's probably
another
not gonna
city.
bite
so
anybody,
Okay.
hopefully, too bad, but.
If it's not a major concern, I'll just delete it.
Hey, can I ask a question? And I hate to bring this up because this drives me crazy, but if you look at number I with cannabis businesses, there is in the cannabis rules that we were talking about last fall, that is a piece that does surface on some of those businesses.
Say, I'm sorry.
But this is for residential.
Yeah,
For home office.
Not as
Residential
home-based.
only?
yes.
Yeah.
Oh, got it.
Not
Yeah.
home-based.
Yeah.
No problem.
Home-based, yeah.
Yep.
And music instruction, I thought that was allowable.
Well,
Well,
yeah. in a
It says
single
unless
family.
conducted in
We
a
don't want
single
the
family.
orchestra in the backyard.
Yeah,
Or.
so you can do it in your house,
Okay,
yeah. Like
But-
if you're a piano teacher,
right.
you can do that.
But it also says only within a single-family home. We
Yep.
don't want somebody in an apartment.
Yep.
doing
Between
music.
piano or guitar or trumpet.
Okay, gotcha.
Yep,
Tuba.
drums,
Right, like,
But single family, it's allowed?
Yes.
Okay, all right, because that seems.
That does, I'm sorry, but that does bring up a question is, what happens if the homeowner owns a duplex and they want to do instruction on in their home?
They own the duplex and they can tell the renter to calm down.
it's not single family.
Technically, that would be a violation, but,
Yeah.
Yeah, technically,
Yeah.
it's not a single family residence.
well, yeah, because it's attached.
Because it's attached.
Yes.
Yeah.
Maybe you want to say single family, and it does say detached, so you're good.
Doesn't it? There you go.
You're good.
You're covered.
Okay. Now, that does bring up another question for me, sorry. Existing non-conforming home occupations, I just want to make sure, does an existing non-conforming, if, let's say they're operating a beauty parlor there, and the mother sells it to her daughter, so it's staying within the family and they're still running the business, does that transfer, or does that, because the property is being sold to somebody that didn't start the thing, does that mean it's now, it can't be reestablished?
If the daughter lives in the home, then it continues.
Okay. Do we want to put any sort of review capability on that? Because, we're changing owners, even though the business itself isn't changing.
And how would the city ever know?
Any existing home occupation
Yeah.
is discontinued.
Well, they have to, doesn't the city know when property is sold? Not
Maybe,
necessarily?
not necessarily, no.
Okay. All right, then that's
County
making it
would
too
know.
complicated.
On number F, if you apply for your FFL, is the city notified?
For the firearms? Police department, I think, is.
I'm just wondering if you go through all the work and actually get your FFL to repair firearms, is there a reason we're not allowing it in a home?
Again, these were some examples I plagiarized from another city. If it's not a concern, would take it off the list, but some people, some people get uncomfortable with firearms.
They're a gunsmith and they work
Yeah.
on firearms. Right. Out of their home because it's a small home-based business.
Right.
They usually do something else too. I don't have an issue with it myself.
No, I wouldn't think so.
What's the flavor of the commission? Take it off?
I would leave it on.
As long as it's not disruptive.
You would leave it on?
I would, but again, my opinion.
I can't imagine we'd have more than 2 or 3 in the entire city, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think if you have the license requirements,
Right.
I think that's
Yeah.
okay. I think it's where people don't have licenses that it's concerning.
Reference to licenses
Yeah.
elsewhere, so.
I think that's like the biggest concern
Yeah.
for me. As a parent of a small child,
I
if
would
there was
agree
someone
with
in my
that.
neighborhood doing that didn't have a license, I would feel very concerned.
I would agree with that.
so
But if
back,
you have the license, you wouldn't be concerned.
No, because I would know that they've gone through training and all of that.
so back under the general provisions, the first one, it said, home occupation required to have a state license. I think I'll.
But it's
state-
is it
state-
required to have a state license to be
Well,
a blacksmith?
State
Or
or
to, like-
federal,
It's actually.
state or federal license.
It's a
Yeah.
federal,
Okay,
So it's
yeah.
pretty high up.
I'll add federal in there to make sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's the only concern about that for me.
And if somebody wanted to do that and not get properly licensed, they're gonna do it anyway.
It's true, it's
That's a whole
true. It
different
is true.
Enforcement problem.
That's
That's different.
That's highly illegal.
and that's a
Highly illegal
that's
anywhere.
a police
and-
matter,
That's highly.
Yeah, and unfortunately, they can print that on those damn
3D printers.
3D printers now, so, yeah.
So, did I hear correctly, the pet grooming and pet care, we're going to take off as to not worry about it?
I don't have an issue with, I don't.
I think you could take that off.
Okay,
The,
it'll go away.
yeah,
And then with the firearm one, if they go through the proper licensing and,
yeah.
You put unlicensed.
well, if they're unlicensed, it's already illegal.
No, because we,
Correct. I'm just saying that's a pretty, like firearms and that's a pretty big thing for a lot of families. Gun safety, like guns in homes is a huge thing. And so taking it off completely could portray something different. Whereas leaving it on that list saying, and just clearly saying unlicensed, even though we know that it says it up there, like, that it has to be licensed. Gun safety it's a huge thing right now. Like, it's just huge. And parents talk about it all the time.
Back to the pet grooming and pet care. Do we need to, if we're removing that, we're allowing it,
We're not saying no.
but do we need to, well, no, I was just gonna say, what about veterinarians? But I don't think that's an issue, because that's a whole nother licensing scenario, and that, I can't imagine anybody would be doing that in their home anyway, so.
We could-
Oh, I hope
We could
not.
put in, for C, you could add that to the list of medical, dental, veterinary.
There you go.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you could put veterinary in there, that's true.
Add it right there.
That's a good idea.
In line C there.
Yep.
The second C.
Yep. One of the Cs.
The only concern with the pet grooming thing, I think, could be, you know, somebody could have 50 dogs at one point,
Yeah.
hypothetically, you know. So the grooming itself isn't the problem. I think it's more, the reason it's probably on this list is because
Pet
of
care.
How many pets are in
how
there?
many pets, yeah.
Yeah.
But
And we don't want it to become into a boarding.
Right.
Could we stipulate pet boarding, like, of over a certain amount of pets?
I think the zoning code already touches on that, but I'll check on that.
Yeah. You can always
gotta
find
think-
a way, a loophole, if you want to.
So to get back though to your concern, so for F, you would say unlicensed
Yeah.
firearm or.
Yeah, I think it just
Yeah.
like really hits homes, like it,
Right.
yeah, it adds a level of
licensed.
clarification specific to firearms and ammunition that can be concerning to a lot of people right now.
Good.
Yeah.
My snarky side says the unlicensed people aren't gonna be reading the city code.
Right.
True, and that's,
aren't
I'm not
gonna
even,
care.
I'm talking about the people who are reading it and want that peace of mind as like an active citizen in their community
You want to do it the right way.
that are trying to do it the right way.
Understood.
I would ask one question and playing a little devil's advocate, although I agree with you. I believe I legally could repair a firearm prior to a 1886 without being registered because it's considered an antique. So would
Sure.
that prevent people that collect antiques, firearms?
Well, if they're doing,
Because they aren't licensed.
if they're doing their own, that's okay. But if they're then taking them to a gun show to sell,
Separate issue from repair. Separate issue from repair.
It's getting awfully deep in here, I'm just
Yeah.
saying.
That's a pretty narrow.
It is, but I know some people
Well, and it's also not required.
that collect the antiques, basically, a lot of them do repair.
There's a lot of potentially harmful antiques that exist in the world that could be just as damaging as an antique gun,
You mean like darts?
right? Like
Lawn darts.
Lawn darts.
the swords in people's homes that they collect.
Okay.
Actually, reading through this, I just realized I think that some of my family history would no longer be allowed in town.
They would have kicked you out a
You
long
can't
time
sell
ago.
it.
No, it's, I come from a line of 7 GPs. My grandfather and 6 of his brothers were all general practitioners and surgeons that had their offices in their homes.
Oh, yeah.
And so they were on call 24/7 and available for house calls and everything else. And I don't think we could let them, not that anybody does that anymore, but, you know.
Could
well,
you
they
do
could
that?
have the home office.
Could you do that in a
house
live-work space?
Sure they could, yeah,
I bet you could.
yeah.
You could figure out a way if you want to. Because live-work is another, whole other animal.
Well, that was the whole working professionals line
Yeah, yeah.
in the first level ones. Professionals that work at home.
Under 14, currently it says motor vehicle body repair and painting. Should that also include detailing? Usually that's a high,
I would say no, but, because it's a very common thing now. And it's
Yeah,
pretty low
it's huge.
impact
It is.
for
It's low
sound. It's like
impact.
a vacuum.
Yeah.
So, I don't know.
Any
We
other
killed this one?
Pardon
I
me?
think just about we've killed him. Yeah. This horse is just about dead.
So my goal is, thank you all again for the comments and feedback. I try to get this into ordinance format for the next meeting and then have it better words to maybe actually act on and make a motion to send it to the council.
Thank you. It was a lot of work.
Thank you for doing all the work to get this started.
Yep,
Yeah.
absolutely. That's part of why I'm here. Oh, come on. All right. Next up is the subdivision ordinance. This one is not quite as far along as the last one because starting from scratch. In summary, the city attorney and I have both reviewed the subdivision ordinance and have found that it's out of date and lacking. Last major changes were made in 1999, although there was one update in 2015 that I found. And I included some notes in the memo from the city attorney about what their concerns were. The first one talks about the park dedication language and how we want to make sure the city's ordinance is consistent with recent Minnesota State Supreme Court case law to make sure that when we say land dedication or park fees have to be paid, that we're consistent with a 2022 ruling. So there's language to tweak on that. I think we're not that far off, but we don't want to risk it now that we know what the courts have said. And there's a whole bunch of language in there about how we can do it and why we can do it. And because remember, all the zoning and subdivision regulations that are, the powers that are granted to the city come from the state. And so we have to be consistent with state law. And so I copied and put in the report there a bunch of the state law that are relevant to the park dedication for those that love a little law reading for bedtime pleasure. But so we'll be working on that element of the update. Then over on page 3 of my report, they talked about how current development, anytime a major project comes in, there's a development contract that's signed between the city and the developer. And what we have as the minimum requirements in the subdivision ordinance for those contracts is really severely lacking. And so that needs beefing up, and we'll get more detail in what is, who does what and when they have to do it and how they have to do it and all. It's a lot of lawyer stuff, but it needs to be done, especially to protect the city. And then related to that, the code now allows developers to post a security in the form of a performance bond, and that's collected to ensure that if they're putting in a street or utilities, that they do it right, and then if they don't, the city can try to collect on the bond. Collecting on bonds are notoriously difficult, and shockingly, banks make you jump through a whole bunch of hoops to get the money. So there are other ways to do it with either take a cash deposit or a letter of credit. So we'll be changing the language to reflect that. And then on the bottom of page 3, I added some points that in my experience, I think the ordinance should have. A couple I want to point out is, especially, we'll start with number 6. I would propose revising the code to allow city staff to approve simple lot splits or lot divisions. So let's say, I'll give you an example. Let's say you have a 150-foot wide lot with one house that's over on one side. And you want to split off 75 feet to create a second lot. Right now, the code says you have to plat it. You have to go through a preliminary plat and a final plat, get all the drawings done and all that stuff. With a lot division or lot split, you would still have to get it surveyed, and you have to show lot A and lot B, but then it could be a staff approval. You don't have to go to the planning commission, you don't have to go to the council. You get deeds prepared reflecting lot A and lot B,
Yeah.
and that gets recorded at the county. It's less costly, more
As long
user.
as as long as the recording and the surveys and such are done.
Yes.
Property definition.
Yes,
Yeah.
and that's all stuff staff would check.
If you go back far enough in the city, you'll find that none of that stuff used to be done.
Yeah.
It was just build on, well, I own these 3 lots, so I can just build on it.
Yeah,
In
closer.
fact, the home I live in used to be a corner lot, and when they divided it, they gave my house 59.75 feet, and the other lot 60.5 feet. So they didn't even divide my lot to meet city code standards, when they could have.
Right. So that's one proposal I'll
good.
be adding in.
Yep.
And then the second one, number 5, is adding some language about the process for reviewing lot line adjustments and lot consolidation. So a lot line adjustment in my mind is if, in Cameron's case, let's say he wants to buy 3 feet of land from the neighbor and just shift that line. We don't need to have it replatted, the same thing, get survey work done, get some deeds drawn up, staff approves it, keep it simple and not overthink it too
We
much.
did that. I personally had that
And
experience.
so I want to make sure that that's in the code because it's not clear
It's good.
in the code that
Very good point.
that can be done.
Yep.
So that's a couple examples. Update the definitions. There's only about 4 definitions in there now, and every ordinance has many more definitions. So that's where I'm going with the ordinance. I have started tackling the task, and fortunately, I have access to other ordinances to plagiarize from again, because I'm not going to reinvent the wheel. And I can pick pieces from past places I've worked and do the word processing. So if there's a general consensus on that, I will be bringing that back at the next meeting.
Wow.
Any questions?
I do have one question, and
How
I
are you going to get all this done by the next meeting? Okay, now, that was a rhetorical question.
Well, the home,
Take it step by
well, really,
step.
Yeah.
the home occupation ordinance is mostly done.
Yeah,
And I've got a really good start on the subdivision ordinance.
good.
Yes,
I
Cameron?
do have one question, and I suspect that this is in state legislation. But at the top of page 3, cash payments may not be used for ongoing operation or maintenance of park, et cetera. Is that something that is required, or could we drop that? Because I could see, we're a fairly well-parked city, and I could see that further down the road, we may not want to add extra parks, but we may want to use money from development to keep up what's here. So it would be nice if we could do that, but like I say, I know that may be a legal opinion, or it may be something that the state has in their rules and regs.
At the bottom of page 2, item G, that's the state language about what the park funds can be used.
Okay, that's what I suspected.
Improvement of
Yeah.
is allowed.
So maintenance means you can't use it for snow plowing or crack sealing.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Use it
Okay.
Why?
to improve a park.
You can
But-
use it to make something better.
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
Or redevelop it or.
That's good.
Can I just have,
Absolutely.
so on where you say the one where you said the current code allows developers to post security in the form of a performance bond.
Yes.
But now you want to change that where it would only allow security in the form of an irrevocable letter of credit from a bank. So as a residential contractor, we're not allowed in the state of Minnesota to do bonding anymore. We ruined that for us, and now we're required by the state to pay into a state fund. I don't do that personally, but would this here, just explain, the irrevocable letter of credit from a bank, is that harder or easier to get than a bond? And like our smaller companies, are they gonna be as accessible to get that? Or is this gonna now limit to where only larger companies that can afford this irrevocable letter of credit? You know what I'm asking?
Yeah, I don't think, my experience has been that it's not any more difficult to get than
Okay.
the bond.
It's just a different vehicle.
Correct.
Okay, all right. That's all I have.
And it's really a performance bond. If they do the work and install whatever they're going to install and it all passes inspection,
Yeah.
city signs off, the bond is released, and there is some cost to get a bond, and there's some
Right.
holding costs. And if it goes more than a year or 13 months, then they gotta renew it, and there's some costs with that. But what it really does is, and it's probably not gonna happen very often in North St. Paul, let's say a developer gets halfway through a project and then walks away,
Yeah.
or they go bankrupt. The city is hopefully holding enough money with that letter of credit to finish the project or at least stabilize the site so it's not a big mess.
I was just wondering what the cost is to get this irrevocable letter. of
Yeah,
credit
there
compared
is
to
some
compared
cost.
to a bond.
Yeah,
And if
and
it
I
would-
don't know the difference, but,
And if it would out smaller companies that can't afford.
yeah. If they can't get a letter of credit, then I would question how they can even do the project. 'cause
Right.
The letter of
Might be
credit.
able to get a bond,
Yeah.
so, because those are more common. I was just wondering.
Yeah, but the city is, if the
It would be
city
another
can't,
good vetting system,
if
though,
the-
if they can't get that letter. of
right,
credit.
if the city can't get the money they need to finish a project, then that's a problem also.
Yep.
Is there any other questions on that?
The plating process, how would that work if it's not part of the initial ask? Just would get recorded and platted at a later date?
I'm sorry, Andrew, I'm not tracking what your example is.
Maybe I'm not using the right term, but I thought the plating was the official recording of the property.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought you had said the way it's done now, it has to be platted first? The
Yes, we-
drawings and,
It has to be surveyed first.
okay,
And so what I'm proposing with the lot divisions is, all these would need surveys regardless, because we've got to know where things are. The current process, again, if you want to divide the properties, then you get the survey work done, then you have a plat, which is a legal document on Mylar that gets recorded. The alternative to that is if the survey shows that the proposed lines and lots will meet our requirements, that then the developer, owner, who applicant gets deeds prepared reflecting this is the legal description of Lot A, this is the legal description of Lot B. Those get recorded at the county recorder's office versus the plat that takes council approval, because the city staff can approve deeds, and so it speeds up the process.
and then that would still be recorded with the county, so all the county property maps are still up to date? Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
Got it.
Are we on to downtown design manual?
We are. And that's a whole big thing.
It is. I'm sure we could be at it for a long time.
Yes.
What's your focus?
Well, okay, so doing some more, three of us talked about it, or three commissioners talked about it at the last meeting, and I did some more digging in the files, and I found a couple of things. There was a staff memo from October 22nd of 2015, I don't even know who prepared it, that outlined some comments that I think reflected many of the comments that we talked about at the last meeting, and that's on page 158 in the packet. And then I went through and added in blue, if you have color, some of my comments based on what I've seen and our discussion at the last meeting of things that should be changed, is where I'm going. It's 20 years old, there's a whole bunch of references that are no longer applicable, and that kind of thing. One thing I want to point out, and I lost not even logged in here, well, hang on, I can log in here in a second. The area that is the current boundaries of the district, I question if the west end should still even be in. See if this works. Okay. So this is the current boundaries of the downtown design district. Down here in the west end, first of all, this North St. Paul Road was First Avenue, and that got realigned. So that changed a little bit. But along the north side, we've got the VFW, there's the M&M Rognus building, I think the Franklin building, Franklin Square are along here.
Yeah.
On the south side, there's the auto parts store, there's the Farmers Insurance, the Reflex Medical Building, and the River of God Church down in here. None of those are historic now. They're all recently built or remodeled buildings. Jumping ahead, when I think of what this was probably intended for originally was for the area right right around Margaret and Seventh primarily. And some of that's even changed now. We've got the new Sentinel building here and the new apartment building here, which they're great, but they don't really fit the architectural character of the downtown. And none of these buildings, they look like they've been built in the last 20, 30 years
Or remodeled,
or remodeled.
yeah.
They're not historical, in my opinion, and I don't think they will ever become historical like the true downtown. So something to ponder is, do we just drop this whole west end and take it out of the district? Don't need a decision now, but that's an idea I want to float by the group. And then, so that's, and then all the references to the Design and Historical Review Commission, of course, they no longer exist. All those would have to be taken out. I know at the last meeting, there was talk about with setbacks, the current code says, or design standards say, all the buildings have to line up right with each other, close to the sidewalk or the street. And you brought up, Patrick, about should we allow buildings to be set back to possibly allow a patio in front?
Yeah.
Or a plaza
I-
or a
I
gathering.
personally think that it has merit and might be an appropriate application.
And again, that's in the site design section there, the
Yep.
second point. So there's things like that. The whole height discussion, to Cameron's point, now it says really everything's supposed to be 2 to 3 stories.
Yeah.
And
And we have 4-story buildings.
the 4 stories kind of blowing that out of the water.
Yep.
And it even talks about if you're next to a 1-story building, you can't go higher than 2 stories and stepping and all that. Some of that, again, might be relevant. A lot of it
I don't-
doesn't seem.
I don't know that it's necessarily relevant, but, I mean, there are design complications to do that. If you want to put a 3 or 4, well, even a 2-story building immediately adjacent to a 1-story building
Yeah.
is very complicated to do, potentially. So,
To actually build it.
yeah, so that, just to meet building code. So there are other issues there that would impact that. I would say that we don't need to necessarily include such a restriction, because I just don't think it's applicable the way the downtown is developing.
And then, excuse me, over in the, well, there's several bullet points there, again, from the first memo from 2015, and then my updates, points, things to think about. And then I found this memo from 2016, which talks about how would the city update the ordinance or the manual, and what would be involved, and there's 7 pages there. It was very thorough done, and what it shows, it could be a very lengthy process. I'm not disagreeing that it needs work. I guess the question for the commission is, and maybe we come back to it when we talk about the work plan, is what's the priority here? Because there's parts of the zoning code that I know need updating. We'll be getting into the comprehensive plan update here in the next year. And if we really strongly think the downtown design manual should be updated, and again, I'm not saying it isn't, do we try to convince city council, put money in the budget for next year and farm it out? I can pick at it piece by piece, but,
The other items you mention are a priority, I think,
and that's why
yeah.
I'm bringing all this up.
I'm kind of wondering if we could maybe make the east end and the west end a little bit more of a form-based code, so that we have a little bit more of a North St. Paul look to everything. You know, that was one of the reasons I was thinking about kind of the stepping of the heights and that type of thing, because really, if you think about it, the only really historic parts of the town that are left are those 2 blocks on either side of Margaret Street. And, you know, it's like that east end, the only building down there that I think has been there for any length of time is I think it's the insurance dealer now that's next to the VFW. That's the only one that at least looks like it's been there for more than 20 or 30 years. And we don't have an awful lot of really old buildings on the east end that aren't homes. So
Well, it's something to consider, but
Yeah.
I think the bigger question is,
I'm
what
throwing
kind
it
of
off.
priority does this have?
Yeah.
That's the big.
That's the starting point.
I feel like it's important, if it's going to be a meaningful document and we're going to keep it and utilize it for development and management of existing properties, then it's important to have it be right. But I think it takes a backseat to the other items you mentioned.
Yeah.
So your idea about potentially having a consultant do it next year, I think that's a really good idea.
Yeah.
We would certainly be heavily involved. That's
Yeah.
not, I'm just,
Yeah.
we're not just going to say here,
Right, exactly.
and
I wonder if you could make it something that the Humphreys School might want to work on for us. You know, they've
Would-
got, certainly are a well-known planning school. Maybe we could help stretch our dollars a little bit if they could get involved. Of course, I'm sure that there, a lot of other towns asking the same thing.
or would it be more the School of Architecture?
Yeah.
Or that.
The
yeah.
urban planning group, that part of the
But
school.
to me, it's more architectural design.
It's more architectural
you're right,
design.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's true, it is.
Ken,
Yeah.
along those thoughts, could you also check to see if there's any grants we can apply for with the Met Council? If I am vaguely remembering something that they offered that this might fit into.
Good idea.
Yeah. And it wouldn't even have to be the U of M. There may be architectural schools at
Yeah.
some of the other colleges or
Dunwoody might
universities.
be a good option. Dunwoody's doing a really good job with their school. I've been very impressed.
All right, so yes, but not so fast.
Yeah, it's
Don't-
not on the front burner.
Don't forget about it either.
Yeah,
Fair enough.
agreed.
Yeah, because we are going to have to start work on the comp plan before too much longer, and that's going to take precedence over this probably, unless we get things so well done before then that we don't have to worry about it.
Yeah, we'll go with that. Or unless we can farm that out too, but
Yeah.
it's just time and money.
Oh, believe me, I've looked at an awful lot of the small-town comp plans that have been farmed out. You'd be surprised at how exactly the same they are from one place to the next.
Yeah.
Like, I can take a look at some of them and I can say, yeah, HNTB wrote this one, I recognize their format.
Yeah.
Don't need to reinvent the wheel. All right, then the last discussion item I had on item E is about the work plan. I have a one-page memo there with a list of many items. I tried to put them in somewhat of an order, chronological order, but thoughts, comments,
I think your
suggestions?
downtown design manual just slid down a few notches.
Yep,
Other than that, it looks pretty good. Zoning
Okay.
updates. And and the comp plan is on there, okay. Yep.
I appreciate your laying this all out.
It's
Yeah.
really,
It's really great.
Very great.
okay, well, it helps me also, because
Yeah.
how many Post-it notes do I have?
yeah,
You have one wall entirely filled now, don't you?
yeah, I don't see anything else that
Vote him at least?
would move there, or not be on.
I get different pens, that's all.
I don't see anything we would strike, that's for sure.
No.
But other than moving the design manual
Other than
down.
moving the design manual down to probably number 8, or somewhere down there.
Okay,
Off-street parking standards, that's something we've been talking about for quite a while, so maybe that could move up to the top of that, of number 6, just as, number A or something, but.
Yeah, that could,
and I know that's a whole thing. It's- And not everyone's going to be happy, probably.
it's awfully hard to develop a standard that, where we will have compliance. It's really hard to do. Our city has too many strange variables in property shape and size.
And age.
Setbacks and everything are all over the place.
Yep.
I'll never forget, there's a place I walk routinely, and the guy has a large, you know how big pickup trucks are these days.
Yep.
It's a crew cab pickup truck, that the only way he could park it in his driveway is to have it hanging over the sidewalk. He can't do anything different. So what do? Say you can't own that truck? Can't do that. So that.
Did he
that
measure,
partic-
did he measure it before he bought it?
Well, that particular ordinance, I think about frequently, and I think, okay, what do we actually want to enforce and how do we enforce it? That's what should be in the ordinance.
Yeah.
And there's just, with all the variables, it's really hard to come up with it.
Those damn homeowners associations will tell them that they have to get rid of their vehicles if they
Right.
don't. But
Well, we don't
they're not
have one of
that.
those.
Yes, thank God. And thank God we don't have an awful lot of dually pickup trucks up here like we did down in Texas.
Yeah.
Because they take up even more room.
Yeah, but Texas is big. Everything's big in Texas.
So we've heard.
You don't like my dually?
Well, it's just.
Are you parking it in a compliant manner? That's the big question.
On,
Could you fit it in the garage?
Another rhetorical
on
question.
a finished surface, you know?
It was just always funny in College Station, you'd be standing there at the access to the divided highway, and you'd watch like 7 pickup trucks all go by, and 6 of them were dualies.
Yeah.
And you knew that most of those were being driven by college students who had no other need for a dually other than maybe dragging the boat out once a month.
So with the notes we've made on the work plan, the planning commission work plan, we're pretty much good?
Yes,
Okay,
that's all I needed on that.
good.
Last item, well, under reports then, the next scheduled meeting is for July 3rd. My sense is that there will be several people that may not be available on the Thursday before the 4th of July.
Thursday is the 4th of July. What,
No, Friday is the 4th.
that's, I'm sorry, you're right, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So I, wanted to know if there'd be a quorum on the 3rd, or is there an interest in moving it to July 10th?
Well,
I would agree.
Either, so I'm on
I will be here, so.
I'm traveling on the 1st and 2nd. I will be here on the 3rd,
I have to look at my calendar for the
so.
10th, because I'm not 100% sure.
My leaning is, from my perspective, leave it where it is, just because then I don't have to try and figure out, is the 10th gonna work? But if we don't have a quorum, then are we not accomplishing a whole lot? So what about, I mean,
I will not be here on the 3rd.
Yeah, I won't be here either.
we got
I'll be
two,
out of
I
town.
will be, so.
I will be.
Don't think I will be.
okay, so it sounds like quorum is gonna be tough to achieve.
Yeah,
Yeah, and most will have 4, and then if anybody gets sick or
yeah.
something. Well,
Question while this comes up. Does the same requirements for a commission special meeting, is that the same for the council where it has to be very limited scope, it can only be,
no, it'd be just rescheduling,
okay.
not calling a special meeting because we're gotta hurry up and do one thing.
Well, I have an event late afternoon that day on the 10th, but
Could you
It's
send
not-
out a doodle
not
poll
crucial.
with maybe some options, and we can, and not even necessarily on a Thursday, if we have options to pick up, maybe there's another day that
Well,
would
yeah,
work.
I'd have to look at what other meetings are,
Right.
you'll have a council meeting on the 8th, right?
No, council meeting should be on the 1st, I believe.
Council meeting on the 1st. Yes, you're correct.
so, well, I heard one person won't be here on the Tuesday, but
Tuesday the 8th is a little better for me, but the 10th, I could make it work. It's just, it's an informal event.
are we saying the 3rd is very doubtful?
It sounds like it's doubtful to have a quorum.
Like it.
Pretty iffy one.
Like I say, send out
Yeah.
send out a doodle poll, they're free, and we can,
I can
Figure out how
check on
many.
the 3rd, but
I'll try to get something out tomorrow or Monday.
Getting ready to go to a wedding in Tennessee, so.
Okay.
I don't know that I have any other reports of interest. I do have one thing. Me, have started working with a developer who's looking at a property. See if I can get my map to open. It's down on County Road B, right near Maplewood, which course, in North St. Paul, it says south. Not gonna be able to find it. So if you go on B as you're going towards past McKnight Road, past the Holiday, on the south side, on the left, there's a little garage, a trucking company. That's in, I think that's in Maplewood, but right before that, there's a little strip of land on the south side between B and the trail, the Gateway Trail. It's zoned for multiple family. He's got a proposal he's working on to put 7 or 8 townhouses in there. It's a squeeze.
You gonna put them in sideways?
No. Well, I'll hand this out, and you can all ponder this. Again, this is a preliminary rough draft, not official.
Something for us to contemplate.
I make copies for everybody.
Yeah.
Why I bring it to your attention is he may be asking the city to support him to try to get grant funding from
Thank you.
the council for low to moderate income housing for ownership of the townhouse units. Ryan and I met with him on Tuesday. And I told him the very east unit, Unit A, well, yeah, it's a Unit A, it's closest to the ponding area. If you look where the yellow is crosshatched there, there's a big chunk of that that's not meeting the rear setback.
3 of the units.
I strongly encourage him to drop that unit, 'cause,
The last one.
yes.
Yeah.
And then he's working with the watershed district on the design of the pond and this and that. And it would be a PUD, and it would be kind of negotiating everything through it. I guess the question for the commission, so the grant funding, talk in the microphone. The way the Livable Communities Grant works with the Met Council is, actually, it's a grant to the city, and the city passes it through to the developer. So we, as a city, have to agree that this is a good project and it's a good thing, and we're supportive of it. And because, again, we get the grant, and then we pass it on through to the developer. I don't necessarily need an answer now, but if there's anybody that has a lot of heartburn about this from a land use standard, I think zoning-wise, if he drops that 1 unit, he can probably make most everything else work. There might be some questions on setbacks, but
Well, and the setback is a concern, except the right-of-way for the Gateway Trail is huge.
yes.
So there's a big piece of property
Yep.
there that
And,
isn't
and,
getting developed elsewhere.
well, right, and it's not backing up to other homes.
Right.
But there, that end unit, there would be no backyard. It's a drainage swale.
Yeah.
And so that's why I said, I don't think that's gonna work. So if you have thoughts, pro, con, high level, early on, let me know, please. And then,
Okay.
because there is a deadline coming up by the end of July for he and the city to put in an application with the Met Council, and we're gonna have a discussion about that with him soon. I don't know, that's all the reports I can think of. Big truck and, car show starts tomorrow night, first one of the season.
We should get out there and do that.
I don't know, Jason, have you got a report?
I do have one thing that I would like to share with you. I strongly encourage you. The city put out an email that there will be a presentation on the future of the community center on June 17th at 5:15 at the City Hall. The city of North St. Paul has been working with a consulting team to examine the future of the community center through a comprehensive feasibility study. The study has focused on 2 key areas: whether the city can move forward with the project, including building plans and grant funding requirements, opportunities to partner with outside organizations that align with the grant criteria, and the city's goals for the facility. We invite you to attend a presentation of the study's initial findings at the City Council Workshop on Tuesday, June 17th at 5:15 PM, either in person at City Hall here or online via our YouTube channel.
That's Tuesday, June 17th?
Tuesday, Tuesday, June 17th.
5:15?
5:15, yep. I don't know what's in it, so I'm excited.
5:15, yeah.
5:15.
1-5.
1-5.
5.
5:15.
5:15. Thank you. Quarter after 5.
Quarter past. You can say it a lot of different ways. All right. Do we have any other reports, commissioners?
None.
So concerning just, so 6B on your last, where you go, check definition of townhouses, duplex, twin homes to ensure they align with state law. So I did go down to SPAR, the St. Paul Area Association of Realtors, because I thought maybe they could help us with that, because we talked about this last month. And they said, you should check with your city to see what their definitions are.
Everyone's just kicking the can.
Yep, and so, but they also recommended that I go to, there's a National Association of Appraisers, which I think that might be a good thing. So I'm still noodling and going down these roads, but they did give me a couple of options, so I did a little bit of work on that, and it sounds like one of their other recommendations was, well, let's see what does Minneapolis say, and because they sounded like they thought it was a city-by-city thing, which sounds a little too diverse.
I would think the building code would have something too, but they,
I'm not sure I'm 100% certain what you're referring to.
What
The
the-
different definitions of townhouses, duplexes.
Oh,
Right,
townhouses,
because we
duplex.
were talking about that last month, and so I did do a little search on that. but
yeah, so
what
is
I-
a duplex, is a twin home a duplex?
Right, and there's got to be some sort of more definable, definitive sort of definition. So I'm still working on that.
Great. Thank you.
That's all I had.
Thank you. I think that's it. Do we have a
Motion to adjourn?
motion to adjourn? Well, you beat me to it, because that's exactly what I was going to talk about, was the June 17th presentation. So I'm interested. I hope I can be there. Other than that, a motion to adjourn
Yes.
from Commissioner Rathe, and a second?
I'll second that.
Second from Alvarez.
Yes.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned at 8:20.
Thank you all.
It clicked.